Picture this, a bright, sunny afternoon in a little place called Oakwood Hills. It's one of those neighborhoods where everything is quiet and boring. The houses all look the same, neat little boxes with green lawns and white fences. Kids ride bikes sometimes, dogs bark at squirrels, and old folks sit on porches sipping lemonade. Nothing big ever happens here. No loud parties, no wild adventures, nothing to make your heart race. It's the kind of place where you'd fall asleep counting the clouds because there's just nothing else to do. That is, until Jake Miller showed up. Jake was new. He rolled into Oakwood Hills one day in a rusty old truck that coughed and sputtered like it was about to give up. The truck was beat up, with scratches all over and a dent in the back like it had hit something hard. But Jake? He didn't look like he cared. He stepped out, stretched his arms, and looked around with a big, friendly smile. He had short brown hair that stuck up a little in the wind, and he wore a plain blue shirt and jeans. Just a regular guy, right? That's what everyone thought. He didn't talk much, didn't wave a lot, just grabbed a box from his truck and walked into his new house, a small place with a crooked mailbox and a creaky front door. Most people in Oakwood Hills didn't even blink. Oh, a new neighbor, they'd say, then go back to watering their flowers or reading their newspapers. To them, Jake was just another face, someone who'd mow his lawn and pay his bills and fade into the sleepy little world they all lived in. No one stopped to wonder about him. No one asked where he came from or why he picked this boring spot to call home. He was quiet, he kept to himself, and that was fine by them. But one person didn't think it was fine. One person noticed Jake right away and decided he was trouble. Her name was Karen Baxter, and she was the boss of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like no loud music or ugly paint colors. Karen wasn't just part of the HOA, though. Oh no. She acted like she owned Oakwood Hills. She had sharp eyes that could spot a weed from a mile away, and she carried her phone everywhere, ready to call someone, anyone, if things weren't perfect. Her hair was always piled up high, and she wore big sunglasses that made her look like a movie star, but not the nice kind. The kind that yells at people. Karen lived right across the street from Jake's new house. The second his truck pulled up, she was at her window, peeking through the curtains. She didn't like the look of that truck. Too old, too messy, too different. Who is this guy? She muttered to herself, tapping her fingers on the windowsill. He doesn't belong here. She didn't even know his name yet, but she'd already made up her mind. Jake was a problem, and she was going to keep an eye on him. Now, here's where things get interesting. Jake wasn't just some regular guy moving into a boring neighborhood. Nope. He had a secret. A big one. Nobody knew it, not the old man watering his roses, not the kids kicking a ball down the street, and definitely not Karen Baxter with her nosy stares and her rule book. Jake looked normal on the outside, sure. He smiled, he nodded, he carried boxes into his house like anyone else. But deep down, there was something about him that no one could guess. Something huge. Something that would turn this quiet little place upside down. What do you think it was? Was he a superhero hiding from bad guys? Maybe a spy with a secret mission? Or something even crazier? Hold that thought, because we're not telling you yet. That's the fun part. You've got to stick around to find out. Let's zoom in on that first day Jake arrived. The sun was high in the sky, making everything hot and bright. Birds chirped in the trees, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. Jake's truck rumbled to a stop in front of his new house, and the engine made a loud pop before it shut off. He hopped out, dusted off his hands, and looked around. His house was small, with faded yellow paint and a tiny porch. The grass was a little too long, and the mailbox leaned to one side like it was tired. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. Across the street, Karen was already on alert. She pushed her curtains aside just enough to watch without being seen. Her lips pressed into a thin line as Jake grabbed a box from the truck and carried it inside. "What's in that box?" she whispered to herself. "Tools. Junk. Something weird." She didn't know, but she was sure it was trouble. She grabbed a little notebook from her kitchen table, the one she used to write down every tiny thing she didn't like about the neighborhood, and started scribbling. New guy. Old truck. Messy. Suspicious. She underlined suspicious twice. Jake didn't notice her staring. He was too busy unpacking. He hauled out a chair, a lamp, a couple more boxes. Nothing fancy, nothing strange. Just stuff a regular person would have. But Karen's imagination was running wild. She didn't like how quiet he was. Normal people say hi, she thought. Normal people wave. This guy's hiding something. She didn't have any proof, but that didn't matter. To Karen, quiet was the same as sneaky, and sneaky was the same as bad. The other neighbors? They didn't care. Old Mr. Thompson, who lived next door to Jake, just waved from his porch and went back to his crossword puzzle. The kids down the street zoomed by on their bikes, laughing and shouting, not even glancing at the new guy. A lady walking her dog smiled at Jake as he carried a box, and he smiled back. Simple, easy, normal. But Karen wasn't buying it. She crossed her arms and kept watching, her phone ready in her pocket. She was like a hawk, waiting for Jake to mess up. Let's talk about Jake for a second. He wasn't tall or short, just average. His brown hair was messy, like he didn't bother brushing it, and his smile was the kind that made you feel like he was friendly, even if he didn't say much. He didn't dress fancy, no shiny shoes or bright shirts. Just jeans and a blue top that looked comfy. If you saw him at the store, you'd think, oh, that's just some guy. And that's what made his secret so wild. Because under that normal look, there was something big brewing. Something Karen was about to stumble into, whether she liked it or not. What do you think she'd do if she found out? Scream. Run. Call someone? Let's keep going and see. That first day, Jake didn't do much. He unpacked his stuff, set up a chair on his porch, and sat there for a while, sipping a soda and watching the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink, and the air got cool. It was peaceful. Quiet. The kind of moment where you'd think everything was perfect. But across the street, Karen was anything but peaceful. She stood at her window, arms crossed, muttering to herself. He's too quiet, she said. Too calm. Something's off. She didn't know it yet, but she was right about one thing: something was off. Not in the way she thought, though. Jake wasn't a troublemaker or a loudmouth or anything like that. He was something else. Something she'd never guess in a million years. And the funny part? The more she watched him, the closer she got to finding out. She was like a kid poking a beehive with a stick, not knowing the bees were about to buzz. Let's paint the picture a little more. Oakwood Hills wasn't a big place. Maybe 20 houses, all lined up in a circle around a little park with a swing set and a bench. The streets were clean, the lawns were trimmed, and everyone followed the rules, mostly because Karen made sure they did. She'd knock on your door if your trash can was out too long or your dog barked too loud. We have standards, she'd say, waving her HOA rulebook like it was a magic wand. Most people just nodded and did what she wanted, because it was easier than arguing. But Jake? He didn't seem like the arguing type or the rule-following type. He didn't rush to fix his crooked mailbox or mow his overgrown lawn. He just lived. And that drove Karen nuts. She liked control. She liked everything neat and perfect. Jake was a puzzle she couldn't figure out, and she didn't like puzzles. She wanted answers, and she was going to get them, even if it meant watching him every single day. So, what was Jake's deal? Why was he so calm? Why didn't he care about Karen's glares or his messy yard? Here's a little hint: Jake wasn't scared of Karen. Not even a little. He had something up his sleeve, something that made him smile, that quiet smile while she huffed and puffed across the street. He wasn't just a guy with a truck and a few boxes. He was a mystery, wrapped in a riddle, tied with a bow of secrets. And Karen? She was about to pull that bow loose, whether she meant to or not. Imagine this: the sun's gone down now, and the stars are popping out one by one. Jake's still on his porch, leaning back in his chair, soda can empty beside him. Crickets chirp in the grass, and a soft wind rattles the leaves. It's a perfect night in Oakwood Hills. Across the street, Karen finally steps away from her window, but she's not done. She grabs her phone and texts her friend Linda, who's also in the HOA. New guy's weird, she types. Too quiet. Watching him. Linda texts back, maybe he's just shy. Karen snorts. Shy, my foot, she says out loud. He's up to something. She didn't know how right she was. Jake wasn't shy. He wasn't scared. He was waiting. Waiting for what? Oh, you'll see. This sleepy little neighborhood was about to wake up, and Jake was the one holding the alarm clock. Karen thought she was the queen, but she was about to meet the king or something even bigger. So, what do you think Jake's hiding? A secret job? A crazy past? Something wilder? Take a guess, because we're just getting started. Karen's watching, Jake's waiting, and Oakwood Hills is about to get a whole lot less boring. Stick with me, and let's find out what happens next. Karen Baxter wasn't the type to wait around. She liked things her way, and she liked them fast. The very first day Jake Miller moved into Oakwood Hills, she was already on the case. It started with his truck. That old, rusty truck with the scratches and the dent in the back. Jake parked it just a tiny bit too close to Karen's driveway, not blocking it, not even touching it, just close. But to Karen, it was like he'd parked right on her front porch and laughed about it. She stormed out of her house that afternoon, her arms crossed tight across her chest. Her face was all scrunched up, like she'd just smelled something bad or caught someone stealing her cookies. She stood there in her big sunglasses and flip-flops, staring at Jake as he climbed out of his truck. He was carrying a box, minding his own business, when Karen let loose. "This is a respectable neighborhood," she snapped, her voice loud enough to bounce off every house on the street. "We don't need troublemakers here." She said troublemakers like it was the worst word she knew, spitting it out like a sour candy. Jake didn't argue. He didn't yell back or make a face. He just looked at her with those calm brown eyes, nodded once like a little tip of his head and said, "Sorry about that." His voice was quiet, soft, like he didn't want to stir up any fuss. Then he turned, carried his box inside his little yellow house, and shut the door. That was it. No big fight, no shouting match. Just a nod and a mumble. Most people would have let it go right there. Most people would have thought, "Oh, he's nice enough," and moved on with their day. But not Karen. Oh no. That nod and mumble? To her, it was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. She didn't trust it. Too quiet, she muttered to herself as she marched back to her house. Too sneaky. She didn't like how Jake didn't argue, didn't explain himself. In her mind, good neighbors made noise, they said hi, they chatted about the weather, they begged for her approval. Jake didn't do any of that, and it made her mad. Really mad. So, she decided right then and there, Jake was her enemy. She was going to watch him. Every single move, every single step. And watch him she did. Karen turned into a one-woman spy team. She'd peek out her window every time Jake left his house. If he mowed his lawn, she'd count how long it took. If he walked to his mailbox, she'd scribble it down in her little notebook. Went to mailbox at 3:15. Suspicious. She even started timing how long his lights stayed on at night. To Karen, everything Jake did was a clue, a sign he was up to no good. She didn't have any real proof, just feelings, but that was enough for her. Then came the night with the shadow. Oh boy, that was the moment things really got wild. It was a regular Tuesday, dark and quiet outside. The moon was big and bright, hanging in the sky like a giant flashlight. Jake stepped out of his house to take out the trash, just a boring chore, right? He grabbed his garbage can, dragged it to the curb, and headed back inside. No big deal. But as he walked, the moonlight caught him just right. His shadow stretched long and skinny across the street, sliding over Karen's perfect green lawn like a black snake. Karen was at her window, of course. She never missed a chance to spy. When she saw that shadow flicker across her grass, her eyes got wide. Her heart started thumping fast, like she'd just seen a monster. "What's that?" she gasped, pressing her nose to the glass. It was just a shadow, Jake's shadow, but to Karen, it wasn't just anything. It was a crime. A big, scary crime. "He's lurking," she whispered to herself. "He's sneaking around my yard." She didn't care that he was just taking out the trash. In her head, that shadow was proof Jake was a bad guy, maybe a robber or worse. She didn't wait a second. Karen grabbed her phone off the counter, her fingers shaking like leaves in the wind. She dialed 911, yep, the real emergency number, and held the phone to her ear. When the operator answered, Karen's voice came out all wobbly and loud. "There's a suspicious figure lurking around," she cried. "I don't feel safe. He's on my lawn right now." The operator tried to calm her down, asking questions like, "What's he doing, and are you sure it's not a neighbor?" But Karen wasn't listening. "Send help," she shouted. "Hurry." Across the street, Jake didn't even flinch. He just walked back inside when the whole shadow thing happened. He didn't hear Karen's call, didn't see her freaking out at her window. He just shut his door, turned on his kitchen light, and started making a sandwich or something normal like that. No panic, no worry, no sweat. If you saw him, you'd think he didn't have a care in the world. Even when the sound of sirens started creeping closer, those wailing police car noises, he didn't peek out or pace around. He just stayed calm, like he knew something Karen didn't. Why wasn't Jake worried? That's the big question, isn't it? Most people would freak out if someone called the cops on them, especially over something as silly as a shadow. They'd run to the window, wave their arms, yell, "It's just me." But not Jake. He acted like it was no big deal, like he had a trick up his sleeve that made him untouchable. What was it? What did he know that Karen didn't? Was he laughing inside, or was he just really good at hiding his feelings? Hang on tight, because things are about to heat up. Let's back up a little and talk about Karen some more. She wasn't always this way. Well, maybe she was, but it got worse when Jake showed up. See, Karen loved being in charge. She'd been the head of the HOA for years, and she ruled Oakwood Hills like it was her own little kingdom. If your grass grew too tall, she'd knock on your door with a ruler to prove it. If your dog barked, she'd leave a note with big red letters, "Keep it quiet." Everyone listened to her, mostly because they didn't want the hassle. She was loud, she was bossy, and she always got her way. But Jake? He didn't fit into her perfect kingdom. That rusty truck, that quiet nod, that shadow on her lawn, it all drove her nuts. She couldn't control him, and that made her madder than a wet cat. Every time she saw him, her blood boiled a little more. "Who does he think he is?" she'd mutter, pacing her living room. "Coming here, acting all sneaky." She started telling her friends about him, too. She'd call up Linda from the HOA and say, "That new guy's trouble. I can feel it." Linda would sigh and say, "Maybe he's just quiet, Karen," but Karen wouldn't hear it. "Quiet people are the worst," she'd snap. "They're always hiding something." And that shadow night? That was her breaking point. She'd been watching Jake for days, maybe weeks, waiting for him to slip up. When she saw that flicker on her lawn, it was like all her suspicions came true at once. "I knew it," she thought. "He's a creep." She didn't stop to think it was just trash night. She didn't wonder if shadows happen to everyone. Nope. She went straight to panic mode, straight to 911, because that's who Karen was. She didn't wait for facts, she made up her own. Now, let's peek at Jake again. While Karen was losing her mind, he was just chilling. Picture this, he's in his little house, the lights warm and yellow. Maybe he's got a peanut butter sandwich in his hand, maybe he's flipping through a magazine. The sirens are getting louder outside, but he doesn't even look up. Why? Why's he so cool about it? If someone called the cops on me for taking out the trash, I'd be jumping around, yelling, "What's going on?" But Jake? He's like a rock. Steady. Calm. Almost like he's waiting for something to happen. What do you think he's waiting for? Maybe he's got a secret plan. Maybe he's not scared of the cops at all. Maybe he's even happy Karen called them. That's a wild thought, right? Why would anyone be happy about that? Well, Jake's not like anyone else. He's got something going on, something big, and Karen's about to walk right into it. She thinks she's the smart one, catching a bad guy, but she doesn't know she's the one in over her head. Let's imagine that night a little more. The moon's still shining, casting shadows everywhere, not just Jake's. The trees sway a little in the breeze, and the air smells like grass and summer. Karen's on her porch now, waiting for the police to show up. She's got her phone in one hand, her notebook in the other, ready to tell them everything. "He's lurking," she practices saying. "He's dangerous." She's so sure she's right, so sure she's saving the neighborhood. Her heart's racing, but not from fear, it's from excitement. She loves this. She loves being the hero, the one who catches the troublemaker. Meanwhile, Jake's inside, totally unbothered. The sirens are close now, really close. You can hear them echoing down the street, that wee-oh-oh sound that makes dogs howl. Any second, red and blue lights will flash through his windows, but he doesn't move. He's got that little smile, that quiet look, like he's playing a game and winning. What's his secret? Why's he so chill? Is he just super brave, or does he know something Karen doesn't? Maybe both. Karen's not thinking about that, though. She's too busy plotting. When the cops get here, she'll point at Jake's house and say, "That's him. The shadow guy." She'll tell them about the truck, the quiet nods, the trash can, everything she's been writing in her notebook. She's sure they'll listen. She's sure they'll march over, knock on his door, and drag him out. In her head, she's already won. She's already the neighborhood hero, the one who stopped the suspicious figure. But here's the thing, Jake's not sweating it. Not even a little. Those sirens. They don't scare him. That call to 911? It doesn't shake him. He's calm as a cucumber, cool as ice, steady as a tree. Why? What's he got up his sleeve? Is it something funny, something scary, something amazing? You're dying to know, aren't you? Well, don't worry, we're getting there. The tension's building, the heat's turning up, and Karen's about to find out she's not as smart as she thinks. Picture the street now. It's dark, quiet except for those sirens. The neighbors are starting to peek out, too. Old Mr. Thompson sticks his head out his door, squinting through his glasses. The kids down the block stop their game and look around, wondering what's up. Even the lady with the dog pauses, her little pup yapping at the noise. Everyone's curious, but no one's as worked up as Karen. She's the star of the show, or so she thinks. Jake, though. He's the real star. He's the one with the secret, the one who's not afraid. Karen's out there, arms crossed, ready to pounce, but Jake's just waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for who? The cops are almost here, the lights are flashing, and the whole neighborhood's about to see something wild. Why isn't Jake worried? What's he hiding? Hang on tight, because this is where it gets good. Days went by in Oakwood Hills, and Karen Baxter got worse. Way worse. She turned into a full-on detective, but not the cool kind from TV. No, she was the kind who snooped and fussed over every little thing Jake Miller did. She'd sit by her window all day, peeking through her blinds like a cat watching a bird. Every time Jake stepped outside, her eyes got big, and she'd grab her little notebook, the one she kept just for him. She'd scribble down everything she saw, calling it suspicious behavior, even when it was totally normal stuff. Like one morning, Jake was out watering his plants. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and he had a hose in his hand, spraying his little flowers. Simple, right? Nope, not to Karen. She squinted through her blinds and wrote, "Watering plants at 8:32. Why so early? Suspicious." Another time, Jake took his dog for a walk, a cute little pup with floppy ears, trotting down the street on a leash. Karen watched from her window, her pen flying across the page. Walking dog at 6:15. Too quiet. Suspicious. Everything Jake did, no matter how boring, turned into a big deal in Karen's head. She was sure he was hiding something bad. It didn't stop there. Karen started telling everyone about Jake. One afternoon, she called a neighborhood meeting. She stood in the park, right by the swings, waving her arms like she was trying to fly. All the neighbors showed up, old Mr. Thompson with his cane, the lady with the yappy dog, even the kid's mom from down the street. They sat on benches or stood around, waiting to hear what Karen had to say. She held up her notebook like it was a treasure map and shouted, "He's up to no good. I saw his shadow moving again last night." Her voice was loud and squeaky, like a mad teacher scolding the class. The neighbors didn't buy it. Old Mr. Thompson rolled his eyes so hard you could almost hear it. The dog lady sighed and said, "Karen, it's just a shadow." The kid's mom whispered to her friend, "She's nuts." They all thought Karen was being silly. Shadows move all the time when you walk, when the moon's out, when the wind blows a tree. It's not a crime. But Karen wouldn't quit. She stomped her foot and said, "You'll see. He's trouble." Then she flipped through her notebook, reading out loud about the truck, the plants, the dog, everything she'd written. The neighbors just shook their heads and wandered off, leaving Karen standing there, huffing and puffing. But here's the thing, while Karen was getting crazier, Jake stayed cool. Super cool. He didn't yell back at her, didn't argue, didn't even seem mad. He just kept living his life, quiet as ever. Sometimes, though, he'd do something funny. He'd step outside, glance across the street at Karen's house, and give a tiny smirk. Just a little lift of his mouth, like he was laughing inside. It wasn't a mean smirk, it was more like he knew something, like he had a secret joke Karen didn't get. And that smirk? It drove her wild. She'd see it through her blinds and mutter, "What's so funny, huh? What's he planning?" Days turned into weeks, and Karen's spying got sneakier. She'd pretend to water her own flowers just to watch Jake mow his lawn. She'd walk her trash out super slow if he was checking his mail. She even bought binoculars, those big glasses you use to see far away, and hid them by her window. Every night, she'd sit there, peering at Jake's house, waiting for him to mess up. She was sure he'd slip, sure he'd do something big and bad to prove she was right. But Jake? He just kept being Jake, quiet, calm, normal. Or so it seemed. Then came the day with the black car. Oh boy, that was a game changer. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind where the air smells like grass and the sky's all blue. Jake was on his porch, sipping a soda, when this fancy black car rolled up. It wasn't loud or rusty like his truck, it was sleek and shiny, like something from a spy movie. The windows were dark, so you couldn't see inside, and it purred to a stop right in front of Jake's house. Karen, of course, was watching. She'd been dusting her windowsill well, pretending to dust so she could keep an eye on him. When that car showed up, she nearly dropped her coffee mug. It hit the floor with a clunk, spilling brown stuff everywhere, but she didn't care. She ran to her blinds, peeking out with her mouth open. Two guys stepped out of the car. They were tall, dressed in sharp black suits, like they were going to a big meeting or a funeral. Their shoes clicked on the pavement, and they walked straight to Jake's porch. Jake stood up, smiled that little smile, and shook their hands like he knew them, like he'd been expecting them. The three of them talked for a second, too quiet for Karen to hear, then they all went inside Jake's house. The door shut, the car sat there, and Karen's brain went into overdrive. "Who are they?" she muttered, grabbing her notebook. Her pen scratched so fast it almost tore the paper. Black car. Two men in suits. 2:47 p.m. Suspicious. Very suspicious. She didn't know who they were, but she was sure it was bad. Gangsters, she whispered to herself. Robbers. Spies. Her imagination ran wild. Maybe Jake was the boss of some secret club. Maybe he was planning to take over the neighborhood. She didn't have a clue, but she was certain it was trouble. Big trouble. She scribbled and scribbled, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. This was it, she thought, the proof she'd been waiting for. But here's the kicker, Jake didn't look worried. Not one bit. When those guys showed up, he didn't jump or hide or run. He just smiled, shook their hands, and let them in, like it was no big deal. What kind of guy does that? Most people would freak out if strange men in suits rolled up to their house, right? You'd think, oh, what's this about? But Jake? He acted like it was just another Tuesday. That little smirk stayed on his face, and when he glanced at Karen's house before going inside, it got a tiny bit bigger. Almost like he knew she was watching. Almost like he wanted her to see. Karen didn't catch that part. She was too busy panicking. She grabbed her phone and called Linda again. "Linda," she hissed when her friend picked up. "You won't believe this. Two guys in suits just went into his house. In a black car." Linda yawned on the other end. "Maybe they're friends, Karen," she said, sounding bored. "Friends don't dress like that." Karen shot back. "They're up to something. I'm telling you, he's dangerous." Linda sighed. "Okay, Karen. Whatever you say." But Karen wasn't listening. She hung up and went back to her window, staring at Jake's house like it might explode. Inside, Jake and the suit guys were gone from sight. The curtains were drawn, the door was shut, and the black car just sat there, quiet and creepy. Karen watched for hours. Well, it felt like hours. Maybe it was only 20 minutes, but to her, it was forever. She kept waiting for something to happen. Maybe they'd come out with bags of money. Maybe they'd sneak away in the night. Maybe she'd hear sirens again. But nothing happened. The car just sat, and the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. What do you think those guys wanted? Any guesses? Were they friends, like Linda said? Or something scarier, like Karen thought? Let's keep going and see what's up. The next day, things got weirder. Jake went back to his normal stuff, watering plants, walking his dog, but Karen was on high alert. She told everyone about the black car. At the mailbox, she cornered Mr. Thompson and said, "Did you see it? The car? The suits?" He shrugged. "Nope. Don't care." She tried the dog lady, too. "They're plotting something," Karen insisted. The lady just tugged her pup's leash and walked off. No one believed her, but Karen didn't care. She was sure she was onto something huge. And Jake? He kept that cool vibe going. Sometimes, he'd wave at a neighbor or nod at a kid biking by, all friendly and chill. But every now and then, he'd look at Karen's house with that smirk. One time, he even winked, just a quick little flash of his eye before turning away. Karen saw it through her binoculars and gasped. "He's mocking me," she said to herself. "He knows I'm watching." That wink made